All right, so we're good. We're welcome back to the show, and people already know who I am. I'm Bob Odenkirk, and
Yeah.
also I hope Bob's good.
I've always wanted to work with you.
Yeah.
And I'm Ken Eston, and I was Ken Eston last week too, and I'll probably be Ken Eston in the next show.
Smart, keep it consistent. That way people can rely on it.
Yeah, people will remember me that way.
It's a good angle.
I actually have a cousin who just recently changed his name. I don't know why he changed his name. He doesn't really like family much, but even so, it's so weird that he changed his first name to just very common first name, different than his own. Anyhow, I don't want to get into that.
I did. When I was doing a telemarketing job, I would not say my name. I'd say Joe, which is like when I was a kid, I wanted to go by Joe. I didn't want to have an unusual name, but as I've gotten older, I've gotten used to it or whatever. But yeah, because on the phones, one time I was talking to this lady and I was like, "Oh, you have the same last name, Jackson. It's cool." And then like during the conversation, I told her my first name. So now she knows who I am, and I'm like,
"Oh yeah,
fuck,
yeah."
I hope this phone call goes well. Because she's like, "How do you spell it?" And I'm like, "Damn, now she knows too much about me."
Yeah.
So
well, you have a very unusual name, Airto. I when I first met you, I couldn't. I was trying to place it, trying to think, well, where does Airto come from? And I had no idea.
It's
And
Portuguese.
It's Portuguese based on a famous artist, right?
Famous drummer. Or he's actually a Brazilian drummer, but the name is Portuguese, as far as I understand. And there's actually another
in
Airto
Brazil,
Jackson out there.
What's surprising, in Brazil, that's what they speak is Portuguese. I didn't know that. I thought in Brazil they spoke Spanish, but they don't.
Yeah.
So yeah.
There's another
another Airto out there who's.
I actually met super randomly. One of my friends, I was at a party and I was talking to some girl who was at this party, and I said my name and she's like, "Oh, my cousin's name is Airto." And I was like, "Yeah, all right." I don't know anybody named Airto. And she's like, "No, his name's Airto and he's actually going to be here in a little bit." And so he showed up, but he goes by Elliot. And I think the funny thing about it is because like it's that thing of having a weird name. You just grow up and it's like, and I was telling him how like I used to want to be named Joe or whatever because it's easier because my last name is so basic, and it's like to have a weird first name is kind of throws people off. And I don't want to say his full name or whatever, but his last name is Smith, so I guess I just said his full name or whatever.
We got it.
Yeah, we'll edit that out or I'll bleep it or something. And so he was like, "I have a totally basic name, but my real name is Airto." And we actually took pictures together with our licenses and stuff. And he got my friend pregnant, so.
Oh, no.
No, it was great. I mean, they have a cute, adorable kid. Yeah.
Oh, they wanted it.
Yeah, but it was so weird because people would be like, Airto got Aria pregnant. You know what I mean? Like
Airto and Aria?
Aria, her name's Aria. She's a fantastic photographer, really, really good photographer, portrait photographer. And she's really, really cool. And she, so anyway, they ended up having a kid together, so.
Are they going to give the kid a name like Joe?
It's terrible. I forget what his name is, but I have to look it up. I'm horrible with names anyway, so it's nothing.
The new thing, the new trend, I guess it's not that new, but people come up with names now that it used to be so easy because, especially for me as a teacher, to know people's names because most people just have variations of the same Anglo-Saxon names, or if they're Latin, that they're usually still fairly consistent, but I just found that more and more were coming up with names I couldn't pronounce. I wasn't sure how to pronounce them, and they're not always pronounced the way you would sound them out phonetically.
Yeah.
And so it's getting harder and harder, and people are making up names. And I know somebody who was just named Atlas. They named their kid Atlas. And
big Ayn Rand fan. Yeah. Must be an Ayn Rand fan. Because like at AAU or whatever, they have a lot of Asian students. So they take on American names. But they often, I noticed they take on these like really old names, like Ruby or like Florence or,
Yeah, I don't know why they do that.
Yeah.
I guess because they have people have trouble pronouncing their names. So they were almost every Asian student I had taken on a very Anglo-sounding name,
Yeah.
and I don't know why they exactly. I guess they do that to be polite, to make it easier for you to be able to pronounce their name and know their name. So I guess that it's done out of politeness, I guess. But it
Yeah,
seems
I mean, it's
strange
because
to me.
we have to like adapt to, we also can't, a lot of those names are difficult to pronounce. Like, I think if you're like, what is it, Cantonese is the more difficult of the Chinese languages, and I know they're not all Chinese, but in my particular scenario right now, they are Chinese. So,
Yeah.
I think Cantonese is more difficult than Mandarin or something like that. But
Oh,
you
I
know,
don't
there,
know.
we talked about this before because I know you did the pilot in China and everything, and we were talking about Chinese comedy, but have you ever seen the movie called Afterlife? I don't know. I think it's maybe a Japanese director or maybe Chinese director.
I don't know. I think I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it. No.
So good. Such a good movie. And I only know of
Yeah.
one other person one time that was talking about the film, and I was like, "Oh, I know that film. Like I watched that." And I was really
Uh-huh.
their storytelling is so fascinating. They have such a
Yeah.
different way of telling stories out there. So good.
Yeah, I found it very interesting that when I would teach the Asian students, most of them were from China at the school
Yeah.
at
Few
AAU.
Koreans.
We can say the school
Yeah.
AAU. It doesn't matter, but
Yeah.
uh, a lot of Chinese students. I think they actually went out of their way to solicit students from China to come because we had so many Chinese students.
I wonder if
But
it's because it's a high population of Chinese people in San Francisco too. So it's like a easy connection.
maybe,
Yeah.
but the they all the one thing they all seem to have in common is that none of them wanted to go back to China. And I
Hmm.
think it's kind of interesting. They were all very different people, and even I found it so fascinating. The English was their second language, and they weren't completely at ease with English. They
Hmm.
didn't have it mastered yet, and yet they're writing all these screenplays
Hmm.
in English and learning, and I'm speaking to them in English. I wonder, gosh, that's got to be hard. It's hard enough to learn it when you know
Hmm.
the language really well. And I wondered why would you go to learn? Why would you go to write in a language other than your own in that country? It just seems like would be so hard.
Very
And
difficult. It's hard
why,
to do it,
yeah,
and I'm a native English speaker. You're a native English speaker. It's difficult to do anyway. It's a
yeah,
difficult
it's
thing.
very
It's one of the
difficult.
most difficult ways to write.
But I found, I the biggest problem with most of those students would be idioms. They don't
Hmm.
get all the idioms
Hmm.
because they don't make any sense at all. They're just kind of random
Hmm.
words put together that we accept some other meaning. And sometimes they have trouble with uh, whether something was plural or whether it had an article because I don't think they had articles all the
Hmm.
time for. But it's just the content of their work was as good as anybody else, even
Hmm.
though they didn't know the language well. They were good students. They
Hmm.
were, they knew what they were doing. But I talked to them sometimes about China because I was kind of interested in their history, and none of them wanted to go back. They all were desperate to find work in America so they could stay here, and almost none of them could because they all wanted to be writers or
Hmm.
directors or something.
Good luck with that shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. And so it's so hard, if they wanted to be in the biological sciences, yes, they'd be able to find work easily here and
Totally.
stay
Yeah.
here. But
Tech or
but they,
something, coding or whatever. Yeah.
yeah. But they want to write half-hour comedies. Good luck. You're going back to China.
Yeah.
Nobody,
That's
nobody,
you're on the slow boat to China with that one for sure. Yeah.
but maybe they changed Chinese perception of half-hour comedy. When I was there, I think I told you they didn't like American half-hour comedies because we were very disrespectful.
Hmm.
And what they kept
Which is
wanting
fucking
from
bullshit, man. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah, but the the show we did, we tried to make it polite and correct, but we all know, all everybody watching or listening to this podcast, since you're interested in writing, it's all about conflict.
Hmm.
Conflict, whether it's drama or comedy, conflict is what makes us watch and get interested. If there's no conflict, somebody comes in, pours a cup of coffee and puts sugar in it and asks if you like cream in yours and all. I mean, that just bores the shit out of you. If somebody puts some cream in your coffee and said, I don't like fucking cream in my
Or
coffee,
sugar. I don't like
throw,
sugar. Yeah, it's
throws it in
fucking
their
ridiculous.
face, suddenly you got a story going. So conflict. But
And
when
you
I
got a
was doing the show in
lawsuit.
China, yeah, when I was doing the show in China, um, gosh, I didn't want conflict even. And I was going, well, you guys have lots of conflicts in the movies you do all the time, but somehow they wanted to do a sitcom. They thought somehow because it was a sitcom, it didn't have to have the same kind of conflict they had in their dramas. They have plenty of conflict in their dramas, and their comedies tended to be more slapstick, kind of the physical
Hmm.
shtick. So they didn't really get, at least when I was in China, the people I was working with didn't really get American half-hour comedy, but that's what they wanted to make. I don't know why. I don't know why they want to make a half-hour
But that's what
American
everybody
half-hour
knows. I mean,
comedy.
it's so universal. Our stuff, we're universal. Being an American is universal for everyone. But people
Yeah.
love us. You know what I mean? There's a reason why we're so great. I don't want to brag about us
Yeah,
too much.
yeah, they seem to, but then they didn't want when it's one thing to write something or to watch it and enjoy it, but when you have to make the decisions, they were making decisions based on what would project the best image of the Chinese people, and so they didn't want people to be insulting or be uh, combative or confrontational. So they took all the energy out of everything we try. Every time we'd write a scene and say, well, no, those people are too mean or too, and because they were all Chinese playing the parts. So they didn't want the Chinese to look mean and confrontational. And so, gosh, it just got to be people pouring a cup of coffee and putting cream in it. It's
Yeah.
like, I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know what to say. I mean, just, and the funny thing about it is I went to China with certain prejudices. One, I didn't know many Chinese people who, except American Chinese, who were just like the rest of us, American.
Hmm.
But the Chinese I didn't know. I had never really met people who were still living in China who were Chinese, and I, for some reason, didn't think they had much of a sense of humor. I didn't think they laughed much because the images I had were all political images, and I always saw them being very strong.
Hmm.
And when I got there and I met these people, they were just like us. They
Yeah.
laughed. We'd go to, we'd go out and have coffee or we'd go out and get drinks or we'd eat. They were laughing and telling jokes and doing, I mean, it didn't matter. I thought that was so cool that they were, here I was in Beijing and I could have been in Chicago. I swear it was just a big city. And except that we had language barriers and I had a translator. Uh, at one point, they said, "Let's all just tell our favorite joke." I mean, one of them said that, and then they were all telling jokes, and they were all funny.
Yeah.
But when we were doing this show, they'd say, "No, that old woman is too nasty. You can't make her so nasty. Make her nicer."
Hmm.
No, that guy can't talk that way to his parents because that's disrespectful. And it was
That's
just
what's
time.
funny about it.
I know that was tying my hands out. I just
Yeah.
couldn't find anything except cute stuff. They would approve anything that was kind of cute funny. But
Yeah.
I hate cute funny. It's like when a
Hmm.
kid's precocious or something.
Yeah.
Precocious kids just annoy me. And gosh, would do things like somebody would say, "Oh, your this apartment's really cool." And
Hmm.
then the woman would say, "Oh, do you want me to turn on the heater?" And
Hmm.
that was the kind of joke that accept, because there's no conflict in that. It's just a misunderstanding that the
Yeah.
word cool in English means nice or interesting. It's a positive statement
Hmm.
about comment about somebody or something. And so then they misunderstood it and thought it was about the temperature. That they'd go for, but that's just cute stuff. I don't like that kind of cute stuff. But that's what we were doing. We're doing a whole show of people misunderstanding language choices, and there was just no character uh, conflict. So I knew it was going to be a disaster, and I felt bad about it. They're spending a lot of money on it, and it was just a big mistake right from the get-go because they didn't want the very things that made the comedies funny. But see, they liked American comedies because it was Americans being assholes, you know?
Mhm.
What they didn't want is the Chinese to look like nasty, mean people, which it was okay if the Americans were doing that, but when it was their own, they wanted to be nicer, but they weren't realizing this isn't a comment about the whole Chinese culture. This was just a company I was working with.
Yeah.
Company I was working with thought they had to portray the Chinese this way to please the Ministry of what do they call it? Ministry of Art? No,
Happiness or something. Which is
no,
weird, that it's actually very
whatever.
weird, that you say that because I grew up on a lot of martial art films, which are very Chinese based, at least in that time. A lot from I think
Yeah,
Hong
kung
Kong and
fu.
yeah, oh yeah, I loved all that stuff. And
Yeah.
and now I guess I'm a racist because I enjoyed those things, I appropriated those cultures because I eat with chopsticks as often as possible, and I love martial arts. But they have there's a lot of family conflicts. There's a lot of, people making fun of people for being dumb. You know what I mean? And that's,
Oh,
so when
in
you
those
said that, I could say,
films? In
yeah,
those
yeah,
films?
yeah, a
Oh,
lot of
interesting.
physical humor because it's martial arts and people, there's a lot of joking, a lot of laughing at people's expense, which was, prime comedy
Interesting.
stuff. Yeah.
So maybe it was just the company I was working with who
Yeah.
maybe if I had worked with another company in China, they would have said go for it. But
Well, it could have been that the temperament changed, you know what I mean? Because I think that they don't necessarily, and I'm going to go ahead and speak for all Chinese people and, their culture because
which you can't because you're Chinese.
I'm
Yeah.
so tuned in. Yeah. And, but from what I'm told to think about that, they don't like martial arts representing them. They don't want to, which I'm thinking like, fuck it, man. That's great. Cause like, then nobody wants to mess with you. You know what I mean? Like if you walk around
Yeah.
like you're some wuss all the time, and a lot of people, a lot of the reason people like America is because we have cowboys, we're commandos. You know what I mean? We portray ourselves as badasses. Like Chuck Norris, and and when Bruce Lee came out, he's Chinese, and people thought it was awesome. That I mean, I'm a huge Bruce Lee fan. I've always been a huge
Yeah.
Bruce
No,
Lee
he
fan.
those were good. He
Yeah,
had a
he
he had
changed the concept of what Chinese people were in the American culture.
yeah.
Because they
But
wanted him to be like,
I can tell you firsthand the Chinese people are not much different than us, which is a good thing if they could just get rid of the government and us
mhm,
too. It's our
yeah.
governments that fight each other, and I just think the people could do better if there's some way. You can't get rid of government, but
We'll
it's
have to
just
see if
like
this part gets approved, and then if not, I'll cut this out, or we'll be
yeah, yeah,
executed. We'll be
yeah.
disappeared or something.
The Ministry of Culture is what I was thinking. The
Right.
Ministry of
Okay.
Culture, they wanted their approval, and they were afraid they wouldn't approve it because it was the first. It was one of the very first ventures where it was the Chinese working directly with Americans.
Right.
I think then they were more cautious than they might have been otherwise. But I when I saw our finished product, I went, oh my, ugh, I hated it. It's the worst thing I ever did because it's just cute. It's so cute. You know your insulin level goes up. It's so saccharine. It's
Yeah.
so sweet. It just oh my goodness, it was just awful.
Yeah.
And they were actually angry at us too. The producers, not the Chinese people. The
Yeah.
producers saying, "Well, this nobody seems to want to buy this, and you were supposed to bring us something that we would buy." And yeah, but you didn't let us do what we wanted to do,
Yeah.
and we had a real bad falling out. I was afraid they weren't going to let me leave the country.
Could have been, man. I've heard some crazy stories, but speaking of martial arts and Chinese culture and everything, there was one thing I wanted to. We talked about this a long time ago. I wanted to ask you about this. Did you say that the RZA was said that he was a fan of your writing?
Yeah,
I know I bring that up because he's like him and Tarantino like notoriously are like big martial arts,
yeah.
fans of martial arts films and stuff like that. But he's a fan of your writing as well.
Yeah, he's a fan of one of his favorite episodes. He
That's
loved
pretty badass.
Taxi. He loved Taxi, and his favorite episode of Taxi was my favorite episode of Taxi that I had written it. And
Crazy.
I actually called. I wanted to talk to him because I thought it'd be fun to talk to
Yeah.
people who come from different cultures than I do. He's from a different world than I am in a way. In certain
East
ways.
Coast, Staten Island, Wu Tang Clan for sure.
So I just want to talk to him. That'd be cool. We have the same common interest, but all our other interests would seem so different.
Yeah.
And so I called his. I only had a number of I could only get a number of his lawyer. I couldn't get a number of his agent or
Yeah.
anybody. But I got a number of his lawyer. I don't remember how I got that, and they were not interested they weren't even interested in telling him I wanted to talk to him.
Yeah.
Nothing ever came of it. I never got a chance. Maybe he'll watch this and see this and he'll contact me. I'd
Yeah, maybe
love to
we'll get him on the
talk to him.
show one time and talk to him about some writing. I think he's like really. I've heard he's really well versed in not only like martial arts films, but directing, writing. Like he seems, from what I've understood, and actually this kind of evidenced by him saying that you're one of his favorite writers, is you have to go into the weeds and like look at all the credits and like to see
Yeah,
who are the different
yeah,
people who are creating these things that you enjoy.
yeah, yeah. But it's interesting. I just wanted to talk to him. I wasn't going to try and sell him anything, but
Right.
the lawyers didn't want to they didn't want to be a middleman for something that looked like schmoozing, Hollywood
Hmm.
schmoozing. Is that
Yeah,
what they
yeah.
do? So
That's
it
pretty
never
crazy.
happened.
That's
It never
cool.
happened. But if you're watching, give me a call. I'd love to talk to you. You can call my
Yeah.
agent, or I'd give you my phone number over the air, but I don't think I'm supposed to do that.
Yeah. No, you probably don't want to do that. You have
Yeah,
to get
no,
a
you don't
burner
want to.
phone or something. But
Yeah,
yeah, that's cool, man. That's awesome. I remember we were talking about that one time, and I didn't know too many of the details or anything. So I was like, oh, the RZA, that's crazy. Like, you know what I
yeah.
mean?
He was in an interview on a show. I think it was a golfing show, so he actually loves golf too.
Crazy. Yeah, he's
Really,
versatile.
all these
Very
things he
versatile
loves
person.
is very very different.
Yeah.
That
Renaissance
has
man.
all these interests, yeah. And so he was on a golf show, and somehow they talked about something that led to somebody asking about, and he mentioned television, and then mentioned Taxi in my show
Yeah.
in this interview. So I said, "Wow, it's cool. I want to talk to this guy," and
Yeah. Yeah.
couldn't
I
do
love
it.
talking to people that like me as well.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
Anybody who
always a
likes me,
bonus.
my favorite people are the ones who like me. Yeah, you like me?
Yeah. We should talk. I got some
Yeah,
stories. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I can regale you with some of my more interesting points that people don't know about. Yeah, that's actually really cool, though. Yeah, I mean, because the RZA, huge in my era of skateboarding, Wu Tang Clan. I mean, I had a roommate that was just like, it was either Wu Tang Clan or the Fugees, Lauryn Hill, just always on repeat, constantly
Yeah,
listening to them. Yeah, I was very, very, very prescient in that day,
yeah.
of my listening
Well,
interest.
that's why I said the people I worked with in China liked what I had done. That's why they wanted me to work with them.
Yeah.
But they liked it as it represented America, not
Mhm.
as it would represent China. And I think that they would learn from that. And that's just what made me think about it was that all these Chinese students I've had. The ones, some of them have been very good, and I'm thinking that maybe when they go back to China, they'll change things a little bit.
Mhm.
They'll bring more American sensibility and mix it with the Chinese sensibility and come with something that's acceptable. Um,
Well, we have no respect for the elderly, people who are.
yeah,
We seem to praise the opposite of the things that they enjoy. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And then we denigrate the things that they hold dear. So,
yeah.
yeah. I
They
mean
didn't
that.
like any of the old. The old woman was very funny in the early draft.
Hmm.
She kind of reminded me of, this goes way back, but to the Golden Girls. Remember
Hmm.
how kind of snippy they were with each
Sure.
other?
Yeah, of
She
course.
was like that. She was this old woman who was really sharp tongued, and I didn't think it put anybody down really. But when I look back on it, I think they have respect for age that we don't have, and maybe they feel that people get that old and don't deserve to be the butt of a joke, even if it's just for fun.
Which is weird because, again, going back to martial arts comedies, they do make fun of like older people.
Oh,
Again, maybe,
really?
yeah. I mean, like I think like in Eat Man, which is like a martial arts film. Maybe that's maybe not specifically Chinese, but I think it's Chinese. Eat Man, IPMAN. It's a martial arts series. Really great kung fu in that. Yeah, I think like they make fun of like him for being old. I've heard that many times. Like they kind of
Huh.
they kind of do some digs. You know what I mean? And at people's expense. Or Kung Fu Hustle, which is another really really awesome. That's a good comedy actually. Kung
Yeah.
Fu Hustle. Yeah, if you
Well,
get a
that's
chance,
why
check
I
that out.
say that I was dealing with one production company in China,
Yeah,
and it could have been just their perspective. It might have
yeah,
been they were just, they were just not a good comedy production company,
could
and,
be.
and
Yeah.
if I'd worked with somebody else, it would have been fine. I really enjoyed it being in China. It was really interesting. As I said, I learned to overcome certain prejudices that I had, that I thought they were so different. They
Hmm.
were too serious and too wanting to project strength and all of these things. And then I get there, and they're just, they're doing the same things we're doing, and they're eating out and same kinds of restaurants as, in China. I'm in Beijing, and I went to a Texas barbecue place,
Was it
and I
good?
thought, yeah, it was good. It really was good. And I thought, gosh, I didn't somehow I didn't think in China there was as diverse as we are. We have
Hmm.
food from all over the world. Of course, why wouldn't they have food from all over the world? Of course they would. But
Yeah,
I didn't
yeah,
think of that. So we ate we ate at a Mexican restaurant in
hmm,
Beijing, and it was
yeah,
good.
yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I definitely can recognize like that being something that kind of rings a bell because if we feel like we're the melting pot of the universe, everybody comes here and they wouldn't do these things, and we call it Mexican food, otherwise they just call it food. Like we're kind of like the ones who figure all this stuff out. But
Yeah.
other cultures often, because people move around the world. It's not just
Oh,
America.
sure. No, it's all over now, and I think it's good. And I think I'm one of those who believes it, that the more we homogenize the world, the more chance there is of actually having peace. I know some people would say, no, that's terrible. You got to keep your own distinction. Everybody has their own history and their cultures. You got to keep that distinct. I think the more you blend, I think the better off we are. It's just my opinion. I could be wrong about that, but I think blending is a good thing, not a bad thing. But
I like the idea of blending distinct cultures, because
if you
it
can
does.
do it, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
because it
hard to do
makes it
both.
interesting. You know what I mean? Like I've like Eritrean food or like Ethiopian food, and like African food, so good. I love like going to those
Really?
places. Yeah, I love
Huh?
it. I think it's so delicious, and it's
Yeah.
like they're eating like really healthy, like collard greens. I mean, different like arrangements of food. If you've never eaten it, it's like like sourdough bread, but it's like kind of like that stretchy pancake stuff, and it's like
Yeah.
you eat a lot of it with your fingers, and it's like you got lentils, and it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
soup. I'm getting hungry actually. We're talking about Chinese
Actually,
stuff and Mexican food and Eritrean food. I'm starting to
when
starve right now.
one of the things when I was in China that I found out, first of all, that they're great hosts and hostesses. I guess you don't call them hosts. Everybody's a host. You don't
Yeah, because that's
break it
racist.
down.
Right.
Yeah. Well, it's sexist to
Mm-hmm.
make hostess,
Yeah.
but they were great hosts. And our host was happened to be a woman most of the time. She owned the production company, which was interesting too.
Mm-hmm.
That it's still a communist country, but there's ownership, which I don't quite understand. But anyhow, she owned this company, and she was a great host. She'd always make sure we had food and we had the things we wanted to drink, and she'd take us out to really nice restaurants. And they had, this is like a typical Chinese image I had was that center lazy Susan thing that turns
Mm-hmm.
around the center, and you have food on, and they did do that, and it was just full of food, and most of it was healthy stuff. They didn't eat a lot of meat.
Mm-hmm.
Most of it was vegetation of some sort. There was
Mm-hmm.
some meat, but not a whole lot of it. And when there was meat, they were very small portions. One of the things I ate that was meat, that I guess you calls as meat, that was kind of weird, was I ate a worm. I've never eaten a
Mm-hmm.
worm before,
How's
but
that?
I didn't like it at all.
Yeah. Was it
But
the knowledge of it before, or just the flavor didn't appeal to you?
the flavor, I wasn't afraid of eating it because they were all eating it. And you know what? You eat a cow, you eat the flesh of a cow. We don't think any of that. So what's the big deal about eating a worm? It was a silkworm, and it was
Mhm.
kind of fat, and it had been deep fried or something, so it had
Hmm,
a crust on it, and it was really gooey and salty, and I
that
just
makes
didn't like
sense.
it. I didn't
Yeah.
like it. But uh, but that was like that was a delicacy there, and it was very expensive. So they gave each person got one, and
Mhm.
because I was a guest, they wanted to give me two and three, and I'm going.
Yeah.
I'll stick with the one. The one's
Yeah,
fine.
one's good, right?
One's good, but they did put a second one on my plate, and I didn't eat the second one. I really didn't like the taste.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um,
that doesn't surprise me. I've never eaten worm, but not intentionally,
yeah,
Yeah, that doesn't sound appealing, and not because I'm like culturally shy or whatever. Just worms are kind of like you said, gooey inside. It's like
gooey and salty. I don't know.
yeah,
I don't know if it was salty because they salted it, or whether worms are naturally salty. But it was very salty and gooey, and not a good taste to me.
yeah. I grow black soldier fly larvae. As part of one of the things I feed my chickens and everything. And
Yeah,
in some cultures, that's like a delicacy. And I'm just
yeah.
like, oh yeah, that they're back there with the garbage
With
stuff.
the chickens,
Yeah.
yeah. What
So
was it that they ate? Some other things they. Oh, you know what surprised me is the foods that are really popular, the fast foods that have American fast foods that have gotten into China.
yeah.
There was McDonald's, but McDonald's they served you at your table,
Oh
but you
really?
still ordered the same foods, but they served it to you at your table, and then they had a Pizza Hut was really big there. They really liked
Hmm.
Pizza Hut. They were all over the place.
I still like
And
those kind of pizzas. I can't really do Pizza Hut or Domino's. I mean, I'm not knocking it. Every once in a while, it's good, but there's something about the cheese. It's like very different now. I like a regular
yeah,
pizzeria. Like I like to go to a pizzeria pizza.
I like any kind of pizza. Somebody said pizza is kind of like sex.
Mhm.
Even bad pizza is good,
Cold
and that's
pizza is
kind of
good.
like,
I like
yeah.
cold pizza.
There's no such thing as bad pizza or bad sex, but I guess it's not true. I guess there is, but
Hey, let me ask you
um,
this. This is a totally different topic, but I wanted to talk. I
okay.
wanted to ask you about this. Did you have writing assistants? Have you been hearing about what's going on with these writing
I
assistants?
have.
Did
We always treated our writing assistants really well, and I read an article recently. You sent me the article, and I read it, and it was
you read that? Yeah,
very, yeah, it was very
that was crazy,
disheartening. It
right?
was very sad and wrong, that people are treated that way. A good way to get into the business, if you want to be a writer, is to take any job you can get on the other side of the wall.
Hmm.
There's kind of a wall walling you out of show business. This is show business. Everybody else is out here.
Yeah.
If you get on the other side as a writer's assistant or a production assistant, um, all sorts of jobs that are very kind of menial, not great jobs, don't pay real well. But when I was doing it, we treated those people really well because we knew they all were working really hard for very little money, and we would do things like I'd give them script assignments. Sometimes I gave at least I gave a secretary a script assignment who got an Emmy nomination for the script because
Really?
it was on when I was doing the Tracy Ullman show, and that several people would write every episode because there'd be sketches. So
Yeah,
each
yeah.
person could write a sketch. And she wrote one of the sketches because I gave her the assignment. I always thought she was a great secretary because she really understood the writing, and you didn't have to repeat things, and she knew what went into the script and what didn't go into the script when she was taking notes. And I
Hmm.
and I called her a secretary deliberately because I'm saying that 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 was kind of a lowly position. We didn't really call her. We used to call her our assistant, our production assistant, our writers' room assistant. Nobody wants to be called a secretary, but she went from this job where she's basically doing secretarial kind of work, typing and all that's kind of bad. Nobody
Hmm.
really wants to do. And we gave her an assignment, one on the Tracy Ullman show, where she wrote a couple sketches, ended up in an episode that got nominated for an Emmy. So she got an Emmy nomination.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And she actually wrote a good what she wrote was good.
Yeah.
She I think I gave her another script on another show. I'm trying to remember because I used her for a number of years because she was so talented because she understood the writing, which made her so much better as an assistant because she knew what to keep and what not to keep, what to listen to, what not to listen to, what notes to take and not. And I gave her another assignment too, but she got this Emmy nomination. I think we won an Emmy for that. I think she won the Emmy. And the sad part is really sad. She died of cancer a
Mm,
few years after that. Um,
that is
but
sad.
she went from an assistant who was kind of a secretary assistant worked her way up to getting a script assignment, but just proving she understood what she wanted to do, and then won an Emmy because of that. And she probably would have had a career had she not died of cancer. So um, we were good to our assistants. We always really were appreciative of the time they put in. But this article was telling them that the
Yeah,
vast
the article was
majority of
crazy, right?
yeah, the vast majority of writers assistants and production assistants have to work long hours, very long hours, longer hours than
Yeah.
anybody, because they have to be there before we start production, and they have to be there after everybody goes home, and they don't get paid well. Still, they never did get paid well.
But with the
But
high
nobody
cost of
said,
living in California, it's just ridiculous. I mean, gas is like, what is gas actually right now? Or are you guys out of gas right now? It's like $5, $6 or something.
"Gosh, it's pretty high." Yes, I think it's four something. Yeah,
Hmm. Yeah, but like
but
rent's high, food is expensive. Everything is expensive. You go to the store, everything starts at $3, 3.50, something like that. Even the crappy stuff. It's all
you go
crappy
to the
stuff.
dollar store. This is the
Yeah.
funny. You go to the 99-cent store, and a third of the stuff they got there is selling for $2.99, $3.99,
Yeah.
especially. What happened to the 99-cent store? It's even escalated.
Yeah, everything's crazy. Everything's expensive, and this is before even the inflation and all the stuff that happened. And yeah, I mean, I was not too surprised about some of the stuff because when I was working, doing like interning and stuff like that, it was a grind. It's a lot of work. You do a
It's
lot
a
of reading,
grind. They make you do more work than they should, and the difference is, I think
and they don't
people
want to pay. They don't want to pay
and they
people
don't want
much.
to pay much. And I think, when somebody complains, well, you're not paying me enough, they say, well, look, I got 10 other people who want your job, which is true.
Yeah, it is
So,
true.
so what can you do? So you can't pay them more, but what you can do is treat them well. And we always treated them well. We always did. I know I felt that we did. We always treated them with respect and with appreciation, but
Hmm.
they were overworked. But it
But
was
she
a way,
said she worked there for 10
yeah.
years. 10 years. That's crazy. Unless you are wanting to be, or if you don't want to be a writer, or you have like, you start off just getting a job and you don't know that you want to be a writer. So you're working as a writer's assistant. And throughout that course, you're like, hey, let me, try my hand at this. A lot of writer's assistants go in knowing, hey, I want to be a writer. This is a good way to get in. I had a friend of mine that worked on, I think it was the show Castle, something like that. He was a
Uh,
writer's assistant for a little bit, and he had a hard time like even segueing into another writer's assistant gig. Like I think he worked on one other show after that, and it didn't happen for very long. And
yeah, this is my advice to people. Don't
yeah,
don't take one of these crappy jobs for 10 years. And
10
and I
years.
I
That's a
still
decade.
say taking one of these crappy jobs is okay to get inside the wall.
Yeah,
But if it doesn't pay off in some way after, I'd say a couple of years,
couple of years, right?
then quit, because it's just they
Like
don't
if you can't
pay
get
you
meetings
enough.
or something with anybody, or get people to read your stuff, or like like
I
help
used to
recommend you
read
to
it.
someone.
I would read their scripts. Our assistants, I'd read their scripts. I'd give them notes, and as I said, I gave someone an assignment who won an Emmy because I gave her an assignment that nobody else would have given her, because nobody else got to know her well enough as I did to know she could do it. I knew she could do it because I got to know her. Um, it's hard to get somebody to know how good you are without getting inside that wall. I keep saying it's a wall, but
Hmm.
yeah,
It
there is a
is. It is a
barrier. There's
wall.
a
It's a big
barrier.
barrier, yeah. And if you're not like born into it, or if you don't have a wealthy background where it doesn't really bother you, you're not getting paid for very long, you can get out and schmooze and feel at ease. It's all about feeling at ease. It's that desperation,
Yeah.
that really messes people up too.
A friend of mine, Richard Sakai, who actually runs a company that produces The Simpsons, started as a production assistant. Actually, started as a personal assistant, which is even a lower, worse paying job with even more work.
And
Uh,
surprisingly enough, those are hard to get. That's a hard
yeah,
job to get.
no, it is, because everybody wants to be in show business,
Hmm. Yeah.
and so those people, if they get a job working for Jim Brooks or Ed Weinberger, which is what Richard Sakai did, as their guy who just takes their laundry in, walks their dog, and washes their car, gets their food for them. That's how Richard started, and then he ended up running the company
Hmm.
that produces one of the biggest shows in television. But he started that way. He started at the very bottom and worked his way up. But it takes a certain element of luck too. So you might be really talented, and in 2 years you haven't had one break at the company you're at. Get out of there, because you don't want to be there 10 years making no money and working so hard. Just
Unless they treat you well and pay you okay, you know what I mean? Then it's like you're learning some stuff. But yeah, I agree. Yeah, for sure.
10 years is still too long, I think. But
Yeah, oh yeah,
yeah, if
10
they're
years is
treating you
crazy.
well, if they're treating you with respect, they're giving you opportunities to learn writing if writing is what you wanted, or directing or whatever it was. They give you a chance to observe and really do really proactive kind of involvement in the business. Yes, it's worth it for a couple of years, but
Hmm.
not 10, it's just not for 10 years. It pays too little, and it's too many hours. You can't have a life much. I didn't know that either. I was reading this article, and these people were saying the production assistants have no social life because they work so many hours,
Yeah,
and
that's certainly
and
true.
then the people ask them to work even more hours, and they're afraid to say no because there's so
Hmm.
many people who want the job, and then
Weekends, holidays, all that kind
yeah,
of stuff.
so some of these people don't even have can't even date. They don't have time to go out. They don't have
Yeah,
time.
that was the crazy thing in that article. And I can't remember where that article was from. I think that was maybe Variety or something, but they were saying they were putting off, I mean, for women, I guess, we have to talk biology, right? Like there is a certain time frame for women to have children, and it's not like it
Yeah,
doesn't apply for men too. But Larry King was having kids until his
yeah, yeah,
180s or whatever,
yeah,
and but for women, there's a window where their eggs are viable and everything. It's like a real thing, so they're
yeah.
putting off having children, starting a family, having
I
regular,
I I
you
read
know
that part. Yeah,
that was
somebody
crazy.
she was saying she I guess she's married, but they can't have children because she can't afford them, and she
Hmm.
doesn't have time to raise them. Pursuing this job, I think she was the one who'd been doing it for 10 years, and I just wanted to say, please stop.
Yeah.
10 years, and if you're with the same company for 10 years and they haven't given you a break, they're never going to give you a break, and
Where do you
I
think
don't
that comes
know.
from? Where do you think that comes from? Like not elevating people through the channels and like, because I was an intern for a Flint Picture Company, and they were nice to me. That was right out of college. I moved right down to LA, and that was the first internship I had. And they didn't pay, but I learned quite a bit about the writing process. I was doing a lot of reading, and uh, Allison and Wendy were the two. She was like a story editor, and Wendy was like, I think she became vice president for the company. They moved up too, and Allison went on to work for Ridley Scott's company, Allison Gilogly. I think that's how,
Yeah,
Gilogly and Wendy Jacobson. So shout out to them. But, they were real nice. And like they did after I left working for them, they did try to assist me doing other things. It didn't really pan out, but they did reach back. They took my phone call at least, and so that I thought that was cool. But
yeah.
other people don't really try to elevate you, and they just will use all your time and energy. What?
I have a very low esteem for people in the business for the most part. They're so narcissistic that
Hmm.
they don't really think. It's not like they go out of their way to make you miserable, but they don't try and help you because they only see their little. They got their blinders on. They're looking at where their future's going, and they're
Everybody's
mis.
looking up, not down or
Oh yeah,
sideways or whatever. Yeah.
but I. I feel bad for these people who spend so much time in these terrible jobs, uh, and I don't know. If you want to be a professional writer, you've got to pay some dues,
Hmm.
and you need some luck. No matter how good you are, you need luck. You got to be at the right place at the right time at some point.
Hmm.
If it doesn't happen after a number of years, you got to give it up. Now, I don't know. I made it when I was young. I got I got this stroke of luck. I was there with the talent, but I also had the right people at the right time when I was very young. I don't know if I would have continued on more than 5 years of struggling with
Your
that
route was
because
so unusual too. I mean, to send in blind submission to a studio and they actually read the
yeah.
script, brought you in, and then you ended up writing for them. And that doesn't even they don't even allow that anymore. So that's not a
Yeah,
avenue that people can have.
you can't even do that now. The legal department shut off all scripts from the outside. They don't
Yeah.
come from recognized agents or managers or lawyers who are recognized by the studios. So
That's the thing too,
my
is now is getting an agent or
yeah,
manager and all that kind of stuff is crazy.
that's why it's crazy too. Because say you want to get in and you gotta okay, you get one of these crappy jobs, but you're on the inside. Being on the inside should mean that then these people will read your scripts at least and give you
Some
notes or
exposure.
respond to them.
Yeah.
That's what they owe you that because they're not paying you money. They're not
You're
paying you
working
enough
for fucking
money.
free, man. You know what I mean? Or like working for poverty
Minimum
level. Poverty
minimum
level.
wage. Well, they pay minimum wage, but that's not much,
No,
especially
because of the cost of living is so high. I mean, it keeps you at poverty level, really. I mean, that's
yeah. And then they ask you to work more hours than you clock, and
totally.
it's just crap. It's a crappy job, and the only purpose for doing it, the only reason you would do it is to get some exposure, get somebody who will look at your stuff, somebody who will give you some feedback, somebody who might give you an assignment
hmm
or even a partial assignment, but
Make some
um,
connections.
make some connections, yes. But otherwise, say you're on the outside. The other way to do it is is make cold calls to managers and agents, and most often when you do that, you don't get past the receptionist.
hmm
So
Or you can do the contest angle, do the
there's
blacklist or something
contests,
like that.
yeah, there's Blacklist, which is actually a list. Actually, besides having contests, they actually list scripts that some people know that they're very selective, so that
hmm
some producers will look at the blacklist list to see
Yeah, you could
stuff.
get
But
work just from being on the blacklist. You don't even have to have
yes,
sold something. You know, you could get rewrite work or
yeah.
something.
So
hmm
I say it's always worthwhile to be sending out these cold call things. You just shots in the dark. You know, a letter, an email, a phone call, all those things, because those don't require you to give up any part of your life. But when you take these jobs on the inside as an assistant of some sort, where it's requiring you to be dedicated to that and you can't do anything else because of that, don't do it for very long because it just robs you of your life.
Yeah,
It's just
you need to eat. You got to live. You got to have money. You know, and it's like you can't. It's hard to write under constant stress. I mean, I was doing that for years. I wrote a lot of stuff, which is actually, I was pretty proficient to be honest with you. But it is very
uh
stressful, and it does at a certain point weigh heavy on you, and it can cramp. If you're like, oh well, I need this. I remember the pressure of just like, oh, I got to write this script, and you send the script out, and you hope that you can get into a writing program, or you hope that someone will read it, and like I don't know, like people don't even really have like that much interest in like seeing what it could be or like what your talent could produce. It's like, oh
yeah,
yeah, this is not 100% something I put on the air right this second. Then like you're kind of discarded. And not, and I'm not saying that happened to me or anything. I'm just saying like partially that did happen to me on some
yeah,
occasions. You know what I mean? But for sure, it's very difficult, and writing is already difficult. You're doing it alone a lot of times, and when you talk to other writers, sometimes they're helpful, sometimes they're competitive, and so they'll sabotage you in certain ways. You know what I mean?
yeah. No, that's absolutely true. It's a hard route,
hmm
and you got to if you choose that path, you're going to have to pay some dues, but you got to limit it. It's like the thing about being a writer is you can have another job and you can write in the evenings. The hard part is getting somebody to read it. That's the hard
hmm
part. You write, and nobody reads it. It's not going to do you any good.
hmm
It's a terrible business
hmm
because of that. It's so hard. Here, I wish it were based on merit. Here's what I think they should do, and maybe in the future when it's a better world, maybe they'll do that. Is all studios should have to read unsolicited material. Now they won't. They'll only read
Yeah.
it if it comes from an agent. Um, and they should give you some sort of feedback, and they should have it on merit where there's no names involved. So somebody whose father happens to be important person in the studio doesn't have an advantage over you as somebody who doesn't.
Hmm.
So the script should come in without names, without without title pages that give stuff away. And it should be a merit system. The
Kind of
best
like the
script should.
WGA. The WGA should have a blind do they have a blind contest? Like if they had something that was like the Blacklist for unsolicited material, at least in that particular arena, you know that you don't run as high of a risk of producers stealing your content, changing it, and then putting it out there themselves and not giving you any credit. Like at least you're kind of somewhat protected. I don't know if they have anything like that with the
Well,
WGA.
the Writers Guild, the WGA is the Writers Guild of America. They have some programs where you can put scripts up on, like, basically a bulletin board of some sort
Hmm.
that's on the computer, and people can look at your scripts that way. So there's some access available through the Writers Guild, and some producers would look there because they know they're dealing with the Writers Guild, which is a professional guild for writers, so it's a good place to go. But it's still hard that way too, because there's so many people.
So many people. That's the thing. So much to
There's
read.
so many people, so much, and I don't know how you beat the system. So I say one should be merit.
Produce your own shit. Produce your own stuff. That's a way to do it, you know?
Yeah.
Because then you cut out that middleman of the gatekeepers. You know, if your script is good, you know, like South Park, those guys, I mean, they just got a $900 million deal the other
Yeah, I
day.
read that. 900
Crazy.
900 million
Why not
dollars.
just make it a billion? You know, like let's just go ahead and throw that extra 100 million in there and let those
I
call it
know. I
official.
should have held off of it. No, I'm sorry. I'm walking. Yeah, I
Yeah,
get a billion, or we're walking.
because we got taxes, you know.
And they only have to do is they have to do something like 10 2-hour things, movies or
Oh, really?
whatever, for the Paramount Plus, which is
Wow.
a TV
The
division.
streaming.
Yeah, so gosh, the people at the top can make so much money, and all the people at the bottom make nothing.
Nothing. Pennies. Not even pennies. They get ripped off and told to kick rocks. And
Yeah, so
I like
so
that we're talking about it like this though, because the reality of it is people will steal your stuff. It doesn't happen all the time, so you can't be supremely guarded, but you do need to protect your work. You
oh
know,
yeah.
but intellectual property is a very important thing, and having an idea, having some originality, having a creative outlook. Other people don't care about that stuff because it's, you know, that it's a barrier of entry, but at the same time it's something that they don't want to spend their time doing, you know, because they're lazy. People are lazy. It's hard to think about this stuff. It's hard to create stuff. And so, you know, I think it's good that we let people know, like, yeah, it is a very difficult, and there is a lot of cutthroat stuff about it. You know, you have to
Yeah.
be prepared for that. If you're going to get into it, you don't want to go into it blind. You want to go into it
Yeah,
with your eyes open.
if you write either a pilot or a movie, you should register it with the Writers Guild, or with the US Copyright Office, and pay the fee, which is for the
It's like
Copyright
20 bucks
Office.
or something.
Well, for the Copyright Office, it's something like almost $60, but
Mm.
it's for life. For $60, you're covered for life. With the Writers Guild, it's something like $20,
Yeah.
and you're covered for 5 years. Then you have to renew it for $10.
Hmm.
I don't, in the long run, I don't know which is better, but before you start sending your scripts around, whether it's a movie or a pilot, TV pilot, be sure it's registered so you have some protection. Um, if it's just an episode of an existing show because you just want to show them you can write their characters, that doesn't matter so much because you're
Yeah,
not
yeah,
worried
of
about anybody
course.
stealing it.
That's you're
'Cause
taking their intellectual property, basically.
right, so that doesn't matter. But if it's an original work like a pilot or a movie, register it and then give it to anybody who will read it. And I know that's kind of scary because, say you give it to the guy who drives the bus on the bus you take to work. You give it to the bus driver because he says he knows somebody who knows somebody. I would still give it to him. I know this might sound, some people say, well, that sounds crazy or naive, but if you're sitting at home with your scripts, you got zero chance of making a career. If you're giving it to a bus driver who maybe knows somebody who knows somebody, that has happened. I know of at least a couple cases where somebody got it to some person through an odd path.
Hmm.
One was me. That wasn't the one that got my career going, but I actually had a second uh, way of getting into that was also a stroke of luck that was a different form of entry. Um, But I do know of somebody who's pool cleaner happened to have conversations sometimes over the fence to a producer who eventually read his thing and then made the movie eventually. In fact, actually, Spielberg made the movie. The producer who talked to the pool cleaner brought it to Universal to make it himself. Universal liked it so much they gave it to their heavy hitter Spielberg, who liked it so much he actually made the movie. So it can happen. It's
Mm-hmm.
not going to happen if you sit at home with your scripts and you don't want anybody to read it because they might steal it.
Mm-hmm.
Register it, and then everybody who would show some interest read it, because it's a hard road. You need a stroke of luck. You need that moment. You make your own luck by giving yourself more opportunities to potentially have that lucky moment. But it's a hard road, and there's some people who want to sell their books or whatever will tell you, you read my book or you take my class, we'll get you. You're going to end up writing. It's not that easy. It's a very hard road. It's a very hard road, but if you love writing, it's what you do. You do it anyhow. And
The other thing too about that is have a lot of ideas. Don't just like have an idea and like I got
yeah,
a lot of people are like I got this great idea for a movie, or like they write a script and every script they write is one variation or something of that story. It's like no, have multiple stories. Have different ideas that are unrelated to each other. That's okay. It's
yeah,
good to have a wide variety of interests and thoughts about things. You don't have to just
yeah.
rely on
Even if you have just
one or two
ideas
ideas.
that you're going to pitch to friends, I even protect those. This
Mm,
sounds a little paranoid, but what you could do is, say you have an idea for a movie. I'd write like about a 3-page treatment where I describe the movie in some detail in, say, 3 pages, and I'd register that as a treatment with the Writers Guild before I kept talking to friends about it. Because you might talk to a friend who you can trust, who then mentions it to somebody that can't be trusted, and then it ends up
mhm.
somebody else takes it. So you want to protect all your intellectual properties. You want to protect them.
Yeah.
But then you want to talk about them, you want to show them, you want people to read them. If you get a job as a production assistant, then you want the people on that show to read it. Can't be afraid somebody's going to steal it. You gotta protect it by registering it, and then get on the inside and give it to people. You got to talk it up too. You having lunch with somebody and you ask them what they do, and they happen to be an assistant to some successful writer producer. Say, will you read my script and give me feedback, and then kind of slip in, and then could you kind of give it to your boss? Maybe they say they won't give it to their boss, or maybe they will if they love it because they want to score points with their boss. So they love your script, and they know their boss is going to be happy to get something that's great. You just you got to make more opportunities for that stroke of luck, but then it's going to take a stroke
Be
of
good
luck.
though. Be good at it though. Like don't give it to somebody unless it's polished. Like have other people read it
Yeah.
first, because
Yeah.
if you
Don't
give
get
somebody
bad.
something once and it's not good, it's not there, the chances of them ever, unless they really like you, the chance of them reading something of your stuff again is pretty
Yeah.
minimal.
No, no, you're right about that. You don't want to blow an opportunity. If you have an opportunity to get Steven Spielberg to read or his
That better
assistant,
be ready for air.
that
Yeah.
better be in really great shape, because if he doesn't like it or his assistant didn't like it, wrote bad coverage for it,
Yeah.
um, then you're done there. You're done. So
Yeah, people don't realize the power of coverage. You know what I mean? They think it's like giving it to the producer, giving it to the director. That's the person that's gonna. A lot of times they don't realize they're handing that to a reader, and the reader may not have that high of understanding of film. When I was a reader, there were a lot of readers in that room, and a lot of them were writers, but some of them were just bored kids that came out straight out of college. They didn't really want to be reading stuff, and they didn't really care about it that way. They just
yeah.
felt, and so you're trying to get those people to care about your script, so they pass it up to the
Yes,
producers, and that's a
people don't
difficult
realize
route.
that. I think people don't realize that usually when you do get this, when you finally get the opportunity to give your script to somebody who has some clout, they don't read it. They give it to
Hmm.
their reader, and the reader reads it and writes coverage. Coverage is what they call their brief description of what they read, and it could be a page to 3 to 5 pages, but
Hmm.
whatever it is.
Or in my case 13, I used to write the longest coverage.
But um Did you
Yeah.
really? You write
Yeah.
13 page
I would
cover?
write crazy
Wow,
long. They
wow,
would be
wow.
like, after a while, they're like, you got to seriously, this is supposed to be 3 pages, like stop. And I was
Yeah,
like, but
yeah.
the details of this are really important. They're like, we don't care. Summarize. And it took me a second. But yeah, you're absolutely right.
That's
They give it to a
frustrating
reader.
too. They give it to a reader, and the reader summarizes and maybe doesn't even understand what you
Yeah, they
got.
don't understand it. They don't get the humor. They don't get they're pissed off because they're not making enough money and they haven't made it in the industry yet, and they don't really care about your script. It's like the 17th script they've read that week or whatever. It's
Yeah.
there's a lot that
My
goes
first
into it.
When I got my job on Taxi, I'd never written for a show before. I just started on Taxi. I'd written one script that got me to get an interview, and then I got a chance to write scripts for them. So I'd written 3 scripts when they gave me the job of reading all the spec scripts. I didn't know anything about it. Well, don't give me the job of reading all the spec scripts, because see, none of them wanted to read it. They didn't have readers on that show, which some shows have readers, some give it to the people on staff who are in a lower position to read. Usually they don't read it themselves. They'll read the coverage from somebody else, and if they like the coverage, then they'll read it. So they're very lazy, and some would say, well, it's not they're lazy, they're so busy. They're busy and lazy, maybe, or
Combo, yeah.
inconsiderate as well. It's all kinds of combinations. But
Mhm.
keep that in mind. A reader's possibly going to read your script. You spent a year of your life writing this movie, and I'm not saying you have to spend a year, but some people
But
will
yeah,
spend
I mean,
7 years
it's
writing
true.
a movie.
True, yeah.
And some people can write one in a month or two, but it depends on who you are and how you write. But you spend all that time, and some reader gets it who doesn't understand it and doesn't even want to be a reader. Like when they made me the reader for Taxi, I was a writer. They were paying me to be a writer. Why aren't they making me read other people's work? Because none of them wanted to do it. And so I was reading their work and writing coverage, and then writing my own scripts as well. And I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. I mean, it wasn't fair to these people. I was scared to death every time I turned something in that they would tell me I didn't have any talent. And here I'm judging these people because, and I said that, I said, I don't think I should be the reader for all these spec scripts. And that's the job you get. That's your first job on staff here. You're the low man on the totem pole. You have to do all the reading of all the spec scripts.
It's helpful
And
though, being a reader. You know what I mean? As a writer, you really get to understand quickly. Like you can analyze scripts really quickly. Like, oh, this is not working because X, Y, Z. If the
yeah.
writer had gone this direction instead of this direction, or the
Yeah,
certain
true.
and technical stuff really will hold people back from enjoying a story.
And if you do learn all those things as a reader, then that's the reader you want to read your script. But that you're possibly going to get the reader who's just reading his first or second script.
Yeah.
And so we're giving you all the bad news today. It's a hard way. It's hard to get in. It's hard to get established. Once you're established, it's not so hard anymore. But it's really hard to get established. It's really hard.
And yeah, I mean, being a writer's assistant's a difficult route. Being a reader, readers can keep you out. Readers can keep you out. I've seen it happen myself. I've definitely there are stories. There's one story that I still think about that I actually recommended. And when I recommended it, I was like, maybe I shouldn't have recommended it. But there was a kernel there that I still think about. But the
Yeah.
story wasn't there. And then there was other stories that literally I passed on and they got made. And those movies did not do well. You know what I mean? So, if somebody has a push and they have backing on something, it'll get made.
That's what we're talking about, luck again. Are you going to be lucky enough to get Airto when he's in his second year of writing coverage so he really knows what he's doing? Or are you going to get me in my third script ever having to read your script, who doesn't even want to do it because they're forcing me to do it? Man, there's so many things you have to be able to overcome, but people do. It's like people say it's kind of like the lottery. Every week I'm reading somebody else won lottery money. Some people win $500 million, and you go,
Yeah.
wow, why can't that be me? So you buy tickets and it's never you. And I never get more than 2 numbers, I think, on any row I ever get. I just can't get it. But somebody's winning. Somebody's
Somebody,
winning
yeah.
those. Somebody has to. And somebody has to get those writing jobs. There are a lot of scripts have to be written.
Can't win if you don't
Somebody's got to
play,
get
though.
those jobs. You got to play. You got to play. You got to get out there. You got to. You can't sit at home, wait for somebody to knock on your door and say, "Excuse me, do you know a good comedy writer? We were just walking the neighborhood looking. We're going door to door looking for a good comedy writer."
You know what though? There was a dude who came to my house, not to offer me a job, but he was pitching his book. He would go door to door and was pitching his
Really?
book. Yeah, and I
Wow.
sat there and talked because as a writer, I'm like, all right, well, it was some crazy space odyssey that took him 25 years to write. And I was like, all
Yeah.
right, well,
Wow.
I didn't read it, but
Wow. Yeah.
So,
When
I was like, I'm good
when I
on
was
that shit.
working in at Paramount, this guy used to drive by. I could see him from my window. He'd drive by in his car. He had a Volkswagen, and it had his picture. He wanted to be an actor, and he had his picture on his Volkswagen, and he had things written on it of reviews he had gotten on his car. And so he'd drive that around. And I used to think, well, that guy's got to be a little crazy. But then I thought, he probably increases his chances because somebody might just want to meet that crazy guy who painted his car to put his name out there. And maybe
Yeah.
he'll get a little role, and maybe the little role will turn into a bigger role. So I don't know what you do. You be inventive, be aggressive, be persistent. Maybe you're going to be one of those guys who wins the lottery because somebody has to. There's a lot of scripts have to be written, a lot of them. It's your chances are better than winning the lottery because in the lottery, your chances are one in many, many million. You're not facing that kind of those odds, but you're facing pretty bad odds. But you
Yeah.
improve it by getting out there and getting more tickets in effect, buying more lottery tickets by driving your car around that says who you are, or knocking on doors or giving it to your barber who happens to cut the hair of the assistant to Spielberg or somebody like that. Those are all possibilities, and I know they sound a little crazy, but it's crazy business.
Yeah, but be personable and don't be weird. I mean, that's
Yeah,
you know
don't
what I
be
mean?
yeah, you don't be too weird. You don't want to walk into an office like you got on the lot somehow and you walk into some office and you start pitching to people who are busy working,
Yeah, don't do that shit.
They're not gonna accept that.
Yeah,
But
you got to know who to pitch to. This is actually, when I was looking at different agents, people were like, "You need an agent." It's like, no, you actually need the right agent for your genre. There's a big difference. You don't need a film agent that does horror movies if you write comedies. You know what I mean? You don't want that type of agent because they're going to try to get you to write a horror movie, and they're not going to know
they
anybody
may,
who
yeah.
works in the comedy field. You know what I mean? If you drill down, your specific sector. Find people who are in that sector. But also, if you can't get any doors open for nobody's going to read your stuff because people hate reading these days, produce something of your own. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Back yourself
That's actually
first.
good. You were mentioning that South Park, that's what they did. They actually produced their own first little 10-minute
Hmm.
snippet that showed off what they could do. And I saw it. I was one of the people who saw it before anybody knew who these people were or knew anything about South Park ever going to be a huge hit. They did it themselves. Now, they did it very cheaply, but it worked so well that they continue to use that cheap look even today in the regular production. It's all that animation is really crappy animation, but that's part of the charm of the show.
Now
But
it's
they
worth
did
nine
it that
tenths of a
way.
billion dollars. That's
Yeah.
that's
That's what
insane.
they did in the beginning and they actually made something. So then people didn't have to read. They could be eating their lunch and somebody puts it on. Take a look at this. I saw this. They put it into their player and you're all just watching. You're laughing your ass off and you go, who are these people?
Yeah.
That's what happened with them. And I believe that a similar story happened to It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. That they
Yeah.
produced their pilot as well, very poorly because they didn't have the money. So they probably shot some of it on their phones or their cheap
Yeah, they just had a
cameras or
camcorder and
whatever.
they shot it in their apartment or whatever, and it still had that energy though that showed that they had a little something. I saw a couple of snippets of
Oh, you
that
saw
pilot.
it? Yes. So
Yeah.
you know what? That's being inventive. That's if you have enough friends, you have a friend who wants to be a cinematographer and a friend who wants to be an actor and you want to be a writer, get together and make something.
Yeah, make stuff. That's the other thing too, is gatekeepers can only get you so far in any industry, but specifically in this industry. And because a lot of people don't really want to write or everybody wants to work with the person they think is going to enhance them, get them further, but if you're making your own stuff, you stand a chance to not only be a writer, but then also a producer or director. You get to wear all those hats, but you also can fine tune your work without anybody like putting, that, watchful eye on you. And if it doesn't work out, then that's okay. You can bury it. Tarantino had a film that he buried before he did Reservoir Dogs. You know what I mean? And then
Oh, really? Yeah.
yeah, and then he
Yeah.
wrote Reservoir Dogs. His famous story is he was working at a rental place, a VHS rental place, and then gave us somehow got a script to Harvey Keitel, and then Harvey Keitel read it and really liked it, and then he ended up going that route and directing and everything. But yeah, produce your own stuff. I mean, that if you back your own stuff and it hits, then you're good. You actually have a little bit more control than just being the writer.
That's true. And I was mentioning before that I got in by I wrote a spec script that I sent to the production company that was making the show that I wrote the spec script for, and they read it, and then 2 years later called me. So for 2 years I didn't even know if they got it, but 2 years later they called me and asked me if I wanted to do something. At the same time, I was renting a room in somebody's house. A house was being rented out to students and other people like me who couldn't afford a house and could afford a room. And but here's the weird thing where I said, like, give your script to the guy driving the bus. I gave my script to the guy, one of the guys who was renting a room in the house. He went to church with, and that's like, once you go to church, you can some of the very successful people are in there with some of the people who are just getting started, because he got my script to a producer who was he knew from the church. I don't know how he had overheard him talking to something, knew the guy was a producer. That guy wanted to hire me. And so he liked my script, called me. I met him at his home and he wanted to hire me, but I got hired by Taxi at the same time. So I went, two huge strokes of luck, hit it, boom, at the same time for me. It was just like incredible. But I'm saying there's an avenue that's still open. The one where I sent it to the production company, that's been shut off. The legal department has shut that off. You can't get through that way anymore. But getting it to somebody who happens to go to church with somebody who happens to be a producer who will read it, because especially in church, he felt more being more benevolent and generous, I guess.
Mhm.
Said, okay, I'll read the script. And he read it and loved it and wanted to give me a job. So
Praise the Lord.
that can happen. What?
Yeah, I said praise the
Yeah.
Lord.
Oh yeah, praise the Lord. Yeah. So
There's a lot of
yeah,
different ways. There's a lot of
there are
different ways.
ways. So that's why, yes, to make your own product, make your own a sample, um, uh, start going to church more.
Right, though. Definitely right.
Write and go
Don't
to
pitch
church
first
more.
and then write later. You're like, write. Be a good writer. Be a good writer just to be a good writer. That's actually a skill that translates into so many different avenues in life that doesn't have anything to do with Hollywood or making films.
Yeah.
It's a good thing to be able to think well and articulate your thoughts and formulate a structure behind a theme and
The interesting thing about writing is you already, I know you love it, or you wouldn't be listening to the show or watching this show. So you love
and
writing.
thank you, Tim.
So yeah, thank you. So anyhow, you love this process. So it can be a hobby for life. And I know you don't want to do it as a hobby. You want to make a living at it, and that's fine too. But because of my age, I've been retired for years now, and I taught at a university when I first retired. Now I don't even do that, but I still write. I write stuff that nobody's probably ever going to read. I do it because I like it. It's like an artist who's a painter might paint forever, or a sculptor, or a musician who just, you do it because you love it. So I still write stuff, and I have to, because I get pleasure out of it, even though I don't even try. I don't really make an effort to even sell it anymore. I still write, and I think what Airto was saying, it expands your vocabulary, it expands your thought processes.
Hmm.
Um, it gives you an outlet for your creativity and for your moods, and it's just a lot of reasons to write, even if you never make a living at it. And I know you don't want to think about not making a living at it, but um, it's a good thing to do. Writing is a good thing if you have the talent to write. Nobody can take that away from you. They may not ever buy your script just because you can't get to the right person at the right time, but it's a really good hobby. An avocation. It doesn't have to be a career. But
And good writers don't make it, and bad writers do make it. But even more importantly, is
sometimes, yeah.
good writers do make it, and bad writers don't make it. So, bad writers will definitely not make it most of the time, but good writers definitely make it.
If you're a good writer and you keep trying and you're diligent, I'd say that you do have a chance. If you're a good writer and you're not diligent, you sit back and you send it out once or twice or here and there, it's not going to happen. But if you do really try and get your work out there, try and get your ideas out there, really make an effort, you increase the odds because most people won't. Most writers are not aggressive. I know that's kind of a generalization, but it's true. Most writers want to write. They don't want to be salespeople. So if in fact you actually try to sell your work, you're ahead of all those others. So that gives you a step up. So you're not just one of the writers who's writing and hoping that you're going to get it to the right person at the right time. And so you send out here and there or whatever. If you're somebody who's doing, you're just all over. You're just really trying to get out there. You're ahead of the game. You're one of the exceptions. So you're already ahead of all these other people you're competing with.
So, or you could be a writer's assistant for 10 years,
Do not be a writer's assistant for 10 years. Do not do that. But
you gotta run.
No, I don't have to run. I was just trying to think of some other positive things because this has been kind of a negative session. So
I got a question for you because we were talking about cigars earlier, and
yeah,
you had a funny story about
oh yeah,
cigars with Sam Simon.
Yeah, we used to when we were working on taxis. Sam Simon and I used to work late hours sometimes on stuff. He was actually my partner later on for about 2 years. We most of the time we were independent, but we worked together. And anyhow, Ed Weinberger had this great. Ed Weinberger was one of the creators of Taxi, and he had this great collection of cigars. We'd always see him smoking them. And one night we were working really, really late. And this is terrible. And Ed's going to find out and he's going to come hunt me down and shoot me. But we went into his apartment, not his apartment, we went into his office and it was unlocked. We were looking for one of those great cigars, and we know they're very expensive too. And he had a humidifier and all this stuff. And we went in and it was all unlocked. It was all open. And we each took a cigar. And we went back to the office and we smoked them, and they were so good. I'm not a smoker, by the way, but smoking a cigar once in a while is really a treat. If you smoke it all the time, you're asking for cancer. But if you smoke one every seldom, once in a while, it really was a nice treat. And this was such a good cigar because I had done that in college. I had done the same thing once in a while. It's very rarely once in a while I'd smoke a cigar, and they were all just okay. But this cigar, just maybe I was just psyched out because I knew he had spent a lot of money on it. But it was such a great cigar. But here's the weird thing. I was running the show and I had a writer's room, and there was a mole in my writer's room. Somebody actually went to Ed and told him, Sam and I stole cigars.
Damn.
Gosh, why would you do that to somebody? And Ed really was upset, got really angry at us, but it's still a great cigar. It was worth Ed yelling at us, but it was not right what we did. I mean, we had no right, but he wasn't there. If he was there and we'd asked him for a cigar, he would have said no. But I could say he wasn't there, and I just figured since he wasn't there and everything was unlocked, he was asking us to take a cigar, right?
I guess so. I mean, that's what the Night Stalker used to think, if you go get in people's houses and stuff. Yeah, no, that's funny. That's actually a funny story. And it's a cool memory that you have, like Sam Simon memory.
Yeah,
a lot of people, you hear
memories.
stuff about Sam Simon doesn't always sound, sometimes people don't always say the nicest stuff or whatever about him, but that's a cool story. I like hearing good stuff about.
Yeah, we had a good time with it. Sam was a very talented man who didn't get along real well with people for some reason. I don't know why exactly, but he didn't have a good social filter or something. I don't know what it was, but whatever. But that was he and I kind of shared that moment together. We thought we had pulled off this great
The
adventure
heist.
and got away with a great heist, and then we got turned in by some rat in our. Yeah, I
Yeah,
never did
yeah.
find out who it was.
That's
Some rat in
interesting.
our group turned us in, and Ed was very unhappy about that. But
We should make a
uh,
list of all the people who are potential moles in
yeah,
the.
I gotta go back and find out who that was.
Yeah.
But one of the things that just brings to mind, because we're talking now just about show business or about writing, and it's really fun to write on a show.
Yeah.
It's really fun. It's a lot of hard work. When you're on a show, there's camaraderie. You guys, you eat together. You eat 3 meals a day together because you're usually working all day long, and you're we went to shows together, because we would hang out with each other, and so all these people on the writers become your friends. And the weird thing about it, they're also your competitors because they're also trying to beat you out because they want your job
Hmm.
and they want to do better than you do. It's a weird kind of environment, but it's not really. There's no hostility. There's kind of a friendly competition and a lot of good times. I mean, we ate good meals. That's one of the things that shows do when you have to work late hours. They buy you really good meals. So it was a lot of friends. A lot of friends I made from the staff, from the writing staff, um, and I got really close to Sam Simon because we stole those cigars and got caught. I think that was a kind of a bonding moment for us. So
Yeah, I think that's an awesome story. I like that story a lot.
yeah. So get a job in show business as a writer, steal a cigar from your boss,
There you go.
enjoy smoking it, and you remember that all your life. Because I still remember that story. I'm just thinking about it. It was just one night of my life. I smoked a cigar with Sam Simon, and yet I'll remember. I'll remember that cigar all my life in that moment.
That is worth it.
Even getting caught was kind of fun in retrospect. You just say, "Ah, come on, who would turn you in for stealing a cigar?" It's just such a small thing, but somebody did. Shows you what the world is. Somebody rat you out for. I also said bad things about Ed sometimes because I'd get mad because he was my boss and he'd make us change something I didn't want to change or whatever, and I'd say some things and somehow that would get back to Ed too. It's probably the same person. I'm sure it's the same person. I quit doing that. Also, I quit saying bad things about Ed, and I quit taking his cigars.
Yeah.
But it was still fun. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that is cool. That's actually, I like that story a lot. That sounds cool. That sounds like a good time because it's like, those are unique moments. That's the in between stuff that, people don't really think
Yeah.
about too much.
If I had it over to do over again, I don't know what other career I'd want. I really am glad I spent most of my adult life as a comedy half-hour comedy writer. I really enjoyed the process, and now that I'm older, I think I'd enjoy it still. It's true that they want younger people to do these jobs for a number of reasons. I don't want to get into that, but I think I'd have fun doing it. It's a fun job.
Yeah.
You sit in a room with a bunch of other really creative, smart people, and you're pitching jokes, and you're trying to outdo each other with your pitching and your joke. Or some of you are being supportive. You're not always trying to outdo somebody, but the creativity in a rewrite room, in a writer's room, is a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. And at the time when I was 25 and I was doing it, there were guys in the writers' room who were in their 50s who were acclaimed writers, and I'm pitching with these 50-year-old acclaimed writers, and I'm only 25 who's never done anything before, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that sounds, that's part of the magic of it. I mean, the breaking stories with people and coming across these like, there is something about that, like pitching in to break a story and then like coming onto these next turn of events in the story. That's a unique experience. That's a really magical moment, and it's pretty
Yeah, it
awesome.
is. It's very fun pitching ideas with other people who are really good. Pitching ideas with other professionals that they got there, which means they're good. It wasn't easy to get there, and you're pitching with them, and And it's a different feeling than pitching to somebody who doesn't know anything about writing. And you do that sometimes. You want their opinion, but it's not the same as pitching with somebody else who's going to say, "Yeah, that's good, but what if you did this?" And you go, "Oh man, I wish I had thought of that before, but I'm going to do it." And thanks for the, and then back and forth, and you give them thanks too. And sometimes I used to be, I would think if you had all the time in the world, you would write as good a script as you're writing with the help of these other people. But you do it so much faster when you have 5 to 12 really good writers in a room all thinking to solve this problem. You're going to solve it in a fraction of the time you would need doing it by yourself. And you may have still cracked it. You probably would crack the problem, but it's going to take you, 12 times longer or whatever. So.
And also you get different, like, you think other people think of different things. And so it's like, oh, like you said, I wish I'd have thought of that. Or like, oh, I didn't know, you learn stuff too along the process. Like, oh, I didn't know about that. That's interesting.
Yeah. But it's a
Discovery.
great thing. So we told you all the hard stuff. Now I'm telling you the rewards are worth it, except do not spend 10 years as somebody's assistant. If they're not giving you a break within those 10 years, they're not going to. And it's just giving up too much of your life.
Yeah.
It's not worth, it's just not worth it. Not 10 years of being a production assistant.
Got to be willing to walk. You got to like have that self-worth to know like it's okay to walk away from certain things.
Yep. And the good thing about a writer, I have to go soon, but the good thing about a writer is that you can always write on your own, and as I said, send them out to people, get them to people, go to church, put it on one of the pews in the church, and leave it there. Walk off, somebody find it. Hey, look what I found! So I'll read it because I found it. That's a crazy idea, but it just might work. It's like you have those options as a writer because you can keep putting feelers out. And continue to write because you like the process of writing.
Get out there.
Yeah. So now I got to go. I have to go do some personal business stuff. I'd rather stay and talk to all of you. But first of all, I want to say happy birthday to Ed.
Ed, way to make it, Ed. Keep doing it.
Yeah. So, okay. So, Airto, I'll see you in a week.
All right, cool. And yeah, so I'm gonna check out this pilot, and we'll talk about that next time.
Oh yeah, next week we're going to talk. We're both going to watch the same pilot, and then we're going to talk about it for you to hear how our different opinions of what works and doesn't work on a pilot. We won't tell you what it is yet because we may change our mind and read a different pilot, but but that's what we're going to do. We're going to read the same pilot.
Should we read the script also? Watch the show and read the script?
Yeah. We should, if we can get hold of the script. It's sometimes hard to get hold of the script. It's easy, always easy to see it. But
yeah, we can get
the script. But if we do, we will, and we'll talk about it. So
cool.
And then we're going to tell you also the secret to being happy, which is actually a very simple thing you have to do. But we're not going to tell you this week because we want you to come back next week. So.
Yeah. Can we give him a hint though?
You give me a hint because I really am faking the whole thing.
Okay, well, it has to do with holding your breath. Yeah, the longer you do it.
I did not know that.
So. Yeah, you reach this peak of happiness the longer you hold your breath. That
just before you pass out, you're the happiest you can be. Yeah.
Yeah. So when people say don't hold your breath, they're trying to keep you from being happy.
Oh, that's interesting. No, boy, as soon as we get off the air here, I'm gonna be happy because I'm gonna hold my breath.
All right. Well, happy birthday, Ed.
Yeah,
Ed out there crushing it.
Okay, take care.
All right, I'll talk to you soon.